I watched my mother walk through the front door of our country club that Saturday afternoon, and I saw Jennifer's face drain of color. 1 second. That's all it took. My wife looked at me like I'd just betrayed her with another woman, and maybe in some twisted way I had. Mom stepped out of that November rain looking like she'd just walked off a Milan runway. Silk charcoal coat, the real kind, not the knockoff Jennifer had bought at Nordstrom Rack. Her silver hair was swept back in this effortless wave that screamed old money. Real jewelry caught the light. A pearl brooch that probably cost more than our first car. A watch that wasn't a Rolex because Rolex was too obvious. She carried herself the way people carry themselves when they've never once worried about what anyone thought of them. Jennifer had been running her mouth about my mother for 6 months straight. "Your mom is such a peasant, Brandon. I mean, did you see those polyester pants at Thanksgiving? And that purse from Target? It's embarrassing. With your salary, she could at least try." She'd said it casually, filing her nails, like commenting on the weather. And I'd let it slide. God help me, I'd let it slide. But here's the thing about my mother. She wasn't raised poor. She wasn't raised anything less than wealthy, old money wealthy, the kind that came with a last name that opened doors in this city. My father had been a surgeon, and before that, her father had been a federal judge. She'd chosen, at 72 years old, to dress simply because she had nothing left to prove. The money was still there. It was always there. But Mom had learned somewhere along the way that elegance whispers instead of shouts. Jennifer was supposed to be at her Pilates class. That's what she'd told me that morning, stretching in her designer athleisure, the tag still attached to the sleeve because she'd seen it on some Instagram influencer. But she wasn't at Pilates. She was here at the country club because she'd texted her mother that she was showing the nouveau riche suburbs what real status looks like. And somehow that had translated to her being present when I'd already planned to meet my mother for lunch. I'd mentioned the lunch yesterday, just casually, over dinner. Jennifer had rolled her eyes and said something about how she couldn't waste her Saturday on my boring family obligations. So I thought I was safe. Now I watched her stand up from our table, drink in hand, eyes locked on my mother, like she was watching a magician reveal a trick she'd already paid to believe was real. "Mom," I said, standing, "you made it." My mother smiled at me, and it was warm and genuine, the kind of smile that didn't need anything else to complete it. "Traffic was lighter than I expected, darling." "Oh, hello, Jennifer." Jennifer's greeting died somewhere in her throat. She was staring at my mother's hands, her nails, the way she moved through space. There was no defensiveness in my mother's posture, no uncertainty. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She just existed, and somehow that was the most impressive thing in the room. "I didn't know you were coming," Jennifer said finally, and there was something in her voice now that hadn't been there before. It wasn't hostile exactly. It was worse. It was uncertainty. Jennifer hated uncertainty. She'd built her entire personality around the certainty that she was better than everyone else, and my mother had just walked in and demolished that without saying a word beyond a greeting. "Brandon invited me weeks ago," my mother said, settling into the chair I pulled out for her. She ordered herbal tea. Not to be healthy, not to show off. Just tea. "How have you been, Jennifer? You look tired. Are you sleeping well?" It was the kindest possible version of, "You look like hell," and Jennifer knew it. That's when everything started to crack. Jennifer's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. She missed it the first time. "You look tired," my mother repeated gently, and that was when I realized what was happening. This wasn't a compliment disguised as concern. This was a woman who'd spent 72 years reading people, and she was reading Jennifer like an open book. My wife was used to being the smartest person in any room. She wasn't used to being seen. "I sleep fine," Jennifer snapped, but her voice had lost its edge. There was something desperate in it now, like she was watching a game she'd been winning suddenly shift into rules she didn't understand. My mother smiled and opened her menu. She didn't say another word about it, but Jennifer couldn't let it go. That was always Jennifer's problem. She had to win every conversation, had to have the last word, had to make sure everyone knew she was superior. So she sat there, jaw clenched, watching my mother order her herbal tea like it was an insult, watching the way the server responded to my mother, respectful, genuinely warm, not the performative niceness everyone used on Jennifer. "So, Margaret," Jennifer said, using my mother's first name the way she always did, too casual, trying to establish dominance through informality. "Brandon mentioned you've been retired for what, 10 years now? That must be nice. Keeping busy with hobbies and such?" The implication was clear. My mother's life was small, irrelevant, something to kill time with. My mother set down her menu. "I serve on 3 nonprofit boards, actually. One focuses on arts education in underserved communities, another on healthcare access, and I've been consulting with a few families on estate planning. Keeps me quite occupied." Jennifer's face went white. Estate planning. Boards. My mother wasn't some retired housewife puttering around with bridge clubs and garden clubs. She was a woman of actual influence, actual purpose. "That sounds exhausting," Jennifer said finally. "Not at all," my mother replied. "When you love what you do, it energizes rather than drains." The implication of that Jennifer's life of Pilates classes and Instagram shopping and status anxiety might be exhausting because it was meaningless, hung in the air between us like smoke. I watched my wife's hands curl into fists on the table. I'd never seen Jennifer look small before. Insecure, yes. Calculating, constantly, but never actually small. My mother had somehow managed to diminish her without raising her voice or saying anything overtly cruel. It was like watching a master magician. The trick was so elegant, you almost didn't see the moment it happened. "Excuse me," Jennifer said abruptly, standing up. "I need to use the restroom." She didn't come back for 20 minutes. When she did, her makeup was reapplied, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She'd been crying, actually crying, in the country club bathroom, like some sort of broken thing. Lunch continued in excruciating silence. My mother asked me about work, about the house, about whether we were happy. She didn't ask Jennifer anything else. She didn't have to. The damage was done. When we finished, my mother stood to leave. She touched my cheek the way she had since I was a kid. "Lovely to see you, darling. Jennifer, thank you for joining us. You really must try the meditation app I use. I find it helps with anxiety." She left in a cloud of subtle fragrance. Nothing heavy, nothing trying too hard. Just expensive, just right. Jennifer didn't speak to me on the drive home. She stared out the window, her jaw working like she was chewing on something bitter. I could feel the rage radiating off her, but it was different now. It wasn't the rage of someone in control. It was the rage of someone who'd just realized they never had been. "Your mother is a bitch," Jennifer said finally, when we pulled into our driveway. "No," I said quietly. "She's just real, and you're not used to that." I shouldn't have said it. I knew I shouldn't have said it the moment the words left my mouth. But I was tired. I was tired of defending Jennifer's insecurity, tired of watching her tear down my mother just to feel bigger about herself, tired of pretending that silk coat and that effortless elegance wasn't worth something. Jennifer's face went hard, cold. I'd seen that expression before, but never directed at me with such intensity. "If you're taking her side against me," Jennifer said slowly, "then we have a real problem." "I'm not taking sides. I'm just—" "You're just what? Admitting that I'm not good enough? That I'm embarrassing? That I'm tired-looking and anxious and fake?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just something breaking. "Fine. You know what? Fine. If your precious mother is so elegant and real, maybe you should have married her instead." She got out of the car and slammed the door so hard the whole vehicle shook. I sat there in the driveway of our $500,000 house in our gated community, with my 6-figure salary, and my 401k, and my picture-perfect life, and I realized something was terribly wrong. Jennifer had always been volatile, always been competitive, but there was something different in her anger now. something desperate and unhinged. That night, she locked herself in our guest bedroom. She didn't come out for dinner. She didn't come out for anything. By the next morning, she'd already started making calls. I found out about them later. Calls to her divorce attorney, calls to a realtor, calls to someone named Derek at his firm, which I later learned meant she'd been having an affair for at least 6 months. Probably longer. The timeline would get fuzzy after that. But the important part was this. Jennifer had decided that if she couldn't win against my mother, she was going to burn everything down. And she was going to make sure I burned with her. The first indication came when I got home from work on Tuesday. My credit card statement was on the kitchen counter, highlighted in aggressive yellow marker. $430,000 in charges, all made that morning. Designer bags, jewelry, a Tesla, furniture for a condo I'd never heard of. "What the hell is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Jennifer emerged from the living room like she'd been waiting for me. She was wearing the kind of smile I'd never seen on her face before. Not confident, not victorious, but something colder. Something that looked like she'd finally decided to stop pretending. "That's my half," she said simply. "Plus, interest for emotional damages. My attorney says I can charge you with financial abuse, by the way. Apparently, not letting me spend what I want on what I want counts. We'll see what a judge thinks about that." "Jennifer, what are you doing?" "I'm taking what's mine," she said, "and then I'm leaving. I've already put down a deposit on that condo, the one with the view of the city, the one you always said was too expensive." My hands were shaking. The credit card company would reverse the charges, obviously, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Jennifer had just declared war, and she was using my money to do it. "You're being insane," I said. "No," Jennifer corrected. "I'm being strategic. My attorney said that if I act fast enough, if I can establish that you've been emotionally controlling and financially abusive, I can make sure you pay for everything. The house, my living expenses, my legal fees, all of it. Your mother didn't teach you how to play at her level, but I'm going to make sure you learn." She walked past me and headed upstairs. Within an hour, she'd packed 3 suitcases. Within 2 hours, she was gone, leaving nothing but a note from her attorney and a marriage that was officially, irrevocably over. I stood in our kitchen at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, holding a letter from a divorce attorney I'd never met, realizing that my mother's casual elegance had somehow triggered the destruction of my entire life. And the worst part? I still didn't fully understand how or why. All I knew was that everything was about to get so much worse. The divorce attorney's name was Richard Caldwell, and he was good at his job in the way that sharks are good at swimming. I met him for the first time in his office downtown, sitting across from him in a leather chair that cost more than my first motorcycle, listening to him explain exactly how much my marriage was going to cost me. "Your wife has filed for irreconcilable differences," Caldwell said, sliding a folder across his mahogany desk. "She's also filed a motion for spousal support, claiming emotional distress and what she's characterizing as financial control. She's asking for 45% of marital assets, your primary residence, and $12,000 a month in alimony pending settlement." $12,000 a month? For a woman who'd just spent $430,000 of my money on a shopping spree designed to destroy me. "Can she do that?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "She already has," Caldwell said flatly. "The question now is what we do about it. I assume you want to fight this?" I did. Of course I did. But I also didn't know how to fight someone who decided that honesty was optional and nuclear options were acceptable negotiating tactics. Over the next 3 weeks, Jennifer's attorney, a woman named Sandra Whitmore, who looked like she ate glass for breakfast, filed motion after motion. She alleged that I'd been emotionally controlling, that I'd isolated Jennifer from friends and family, that I'd prevented her from pursuing her own career. Every single claim was a lie, but lies have a way of gaining weight when they're repeated often enough in legal documents. Then came the recording. Caldwell called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. He played it without preamble. A phone call between Jennifer and Derek, whoever Derek was. Derek turned out to be her personal trainer. Derek also turned out to be the man she'd been sleeping with for the better part of 8 months. But that wasn't the worst part of the recording. "He's going to fight me on everything," Jennifer said, her voice sharp and calculated. "His attorney's going to claim I'm being unreasonable, so I need insurance. That's where the story comes in." "What story?" Derek asked, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. "The one where he hurt me," Jennifer said simply. "Emotionally, physically if necessary. I have bruises from Pilates. I can say they're from him. His mother humiliated me publicly at the country club. There are witnesses. I can claim it was orchestrated, that she was helping him isolate me from society, that he used his family's money and influence to control me." My blood went cold. "That's crazy," Derek said, but he didn't sound as horrified as he should have. "It's strategy," Jennifer corrected. "And it works. Judges see a man with a high income and a controlling family. They see a woman who's been emotionally abused. They don't ask questions. They just write checks. I'll get the house, I'll get the money, and I'll get the satisfaction of knowing he lost everything trying to defend himself against lies he can't disprove." Caldwell stopped the recording. "This is good," he said simply. "Good? She's talking about committing perjury. She's talking about accusing me of abuse I didn't commit." "I know," Caldwell said. "Which means we can use it. This is a recording of her planning to fabricate evidence and commit fraud. We take this to the judge, and not only does her case fall apart, she potentially faces criminal charges. Wire fraud, filing false legal documents, perjury. Sandra Whitmore is going to have a very bad day." I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something worse. The realization that my wife was so far gone that she'd decided to destroy not just our marriage, but me, without hesitation or remorse. And the only thing that had saved me was her stupidity in having that conversation on a phone line that could be recorded. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Jennifer showed up in a demure navy dress, her hair in a soft updo, looking exactly like the victim she'd been pretending to be. Her attorney had clearly coached her well. She had tissues in her purse, ready for tears. She had a therapist's letter claiming she was suffering from anxiety and depression. She had a narrative, polished and practiced. Then Caldwell played the recording. The courtroom went silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind where you can hear your own heartbeat and everyone else's breathing. Jennifer's face went white, then red, then a blotchy, mottled color that suggested her blood pressure was reaching dangerous levels. Sandra Whitmore stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "Your Honor, this recording is inadmissible," she said immediately. "It was obtained without consent, which violates state wiretapping laws." "Actually," Caldwell said calmly, "my client is on the call. He consented to the recording of his own telephone line. That makes it perfectly legal. And what we're hearing is your client admitting to planning fraud, fabricating evidence, and committing perjury." The judge, a woman named Patricia Morrison, who I'd later learn had zero tolerance for liars, looked at Jennifer over the top of her reading glasses. "Ms. Chen," she said, using Jennifer's maiden name because the divorce hadn't been finalized, "is this your voice on the recording?" Jennifer's attorney put a hand on her arm, but Jennifer waved it away. She was done. I could see it in her face. She was done pretending, done strategizing, done with the careful choreography of victimhood. "Yes," Jennifer said flatly. "It's me." "And did you, in fact, plan to fabricate allegations of physical abuse against your husband?" "I did what I needed to do to protect myself financially," Jennifer said, and there was something almost honest in her voice now. Something that sounded like the real Jennifer underneath all the pretense. "He married me and then decided I wasn't good enough. His mother decided I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't going to let them destroy me financially for the crime of not being born into money." That's not how this works, Judge Morrison said coldly. And you've just admitted to it in open court. I'm dismissing your claim for spousal support, your claim for the primary residence, and your claim for attorney's fees. You'll receive your share of marital assets as calculated by the marital property formula, nothing more. I'm also referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. Jennifer's face crumpled, but not in the way she'd practiced. This was real. This was the moment she understood that her own mouth had sealed her fate. As for you, Mr. Patterson, Judge Morrison said, turning to me, I want to be clear. This woman's actions don't reflect on you, but you might want to examine how you allowed yourself to be in a position where someone could attempt this. That's the real lesson here. The hearing ended in under an hour. Jennifer left the courthouse in handcuffs, transferred to the custody of the DA's office for questioning. Sandra Whitmore packed up her briefcase without looking at anyone, her reputation taking a hit for having been duped into filing fraudulent documents. I walked out into the November sunlight, feeling like I'd been hollowed out and refilled with something other than blood. Mom was waiting for me on the courthouse steps. I hadn't even asked her to come, but she was there anyway, elegant in a cream-colored coat, looking at me with the kind of love that doesn't need to be complicated. "Hello, darling," she said simply. "She tried to destroy me," I said, my voice cracking. "I know," Mom said. "But she couldn't. Do you understand why?" I shook my head. "Because you're not actually the person she was attacking," Mom said. "She was attacking who she thought you were, and who she thought I was. We were just mirrors, and she couldn't bear what she saw reflected back. That's not our problem." We walked to her car in silence. She drove me to her house, made me tea I didn't want, and let me sit in her library for 3 hours without saying anything at all. That's what real elegance is. Not the clothes or the jewelry or the effortless way she moves through the world. It's knowing when someone needs silence more than conversation. It's being present without demanding to be seen. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Jennifer took a plea deal on the fraud charges, probation and community service instead of jail time. I kept the house, kept most of the money, and lost the woman I'd married, thinking she was someone she'd never actually been. And I learned something my mother had probably always known, that elegance isn't about impressing people. It's about knowing who you are and being comfortable enough with that knowledge to never have to prove it to anyone. I spent the rest of my life learning that lesson.